Um, my name is John Jackson, John Jackson, and we're going to talk to these three gentlemen today about citrus in this area. And so, Blossom, if you'll look at there and just tell them who you are, that way they won't get confused when we have the video.
William Davis, nickname Blossom.
Richard Davis.
Phil Cross.
So, Blossom, Phil, and David, Richard, the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame has been doing these oral histories to capture some stories. And so I want to start off, first of all, how did you get the nickname Blossom?
My understanding is my grandfather gave it to me when I was a baby and I was born in an orange grove.
So you were the Blossom in the family,
Yeah,
huh?
I was a Blossom in the family.
And it has stuck ever since.
It's stuck ever since, except 3.5 years I was in the military, and then I was at University of Florida for a few years, and I didn't have it there, but when I came back home, the name came back.
Yeah.
Well, you've been involved in the citrus industry in Orange County, especially West Orange County, for a number of years. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the people that names that I remember, and some others, and give me just a little bit of an insight on what you remember. And we talked a little earlier about Charlie Root. Tell us about Charlie. What do you remember about him?
Well, Charlie was a customer, so that's the way I really knew him. And he was with Likes Brothers, and we did some custom work for him, like hedging and things like that. And other than that, I knew Charlie as a person and as a tennis player.
Yeah, Charlie did like to play tennis. He was
Play tennis, yeah. And he was the only guy I ever saw that he played with both hands. If a ball came on the left, he'd change and he hit it left-handed.
So there was no backhand for Charlie.
No
It was
backhand for Charlie.
all a forehand.
Yeah.
Well, and you say that you did some work for him. You were a caretaker for your career, right? You looked after other people's groves.
Correct.
You now have groves yourself, but your primary business was looking after other folks' groves. Now, I imagine you ran across a wide range of people. Some gave you complete control, and others, like Charlie, you did specific operations for them.
Correct. Yeah, we had we managed at one time about 4,000 acres of groves for people from all walks of life. There was people in the jewelry business, real estate, insurance people, doctors, lawyers, and it wasn't like having 4,000 acres in down south where it's all together. We were scattered all over Orange and Lake, some in Seminole, and we would do work in one grove, and 3 miles down the road there would be another one belonging to another person, and we just hopped around from grove to grove.
One of my favorite people that I used to deal with was George Howard at Southern Fruit. George was a very colorful fella and always had an opinion on everything. Did you ever do any work for George, or what involved with George at all?
Well, I didn't do any work that I remember for George, but we were on the same radio with them, same radio tower, so we talked a lot back and forth together. And
George always had stories to tell, and we were involved in one project where the researcher was trying to determine the impact of Lake Apopka on a cold night. Now, you've lived here all your life, and you know that the groves south of the lake benefited tremendously from the lake, that there would be some warm groves down there. Well, we were trying to quantify that, and some researcher in Gainesville had a grant, was working with NASA. But anyway, George was using his equipment to turn lights on to get the plane lined up. So
Yeah.
I spent some nights with George, and the word was that whenever it was a cold night, that Southern Fruit was the place to go. George always had a table spread out full of food and everything else, and that everybody in Winter Garden stopped by Southern Fruit on a cold night because they could get some good chow from George
Yeah.
Howard.
I don't recall that.
Some of the other people that I had some interaction with, Everett Fisher, for example. Everett used to work for the Extension Service a little bit, but you were involved with Winter Garden, and Everett ran Winter Garden for all those years. What kind of a guy was Everett? Was he a pretty straight-laced fellow?
That's a hard question.
I know that he parked his Jeep in the same spot next to that office so long
Yeah.
that the ruts were worn out. He almost high-centered it. He'd worn that place out.
Yeah. Well, he was.
A hands-on kind of a guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He's always in the packing house
He
checking.
he had an office in the packing house back in the back, and that's where he stayed when they were running fruit. In fact, he rarely stayed in the office down on the main office, and so he could sit up there and see what was going on in the packing house. But he was. He thought he had the greatest packing house in the world, and he thought that he should be making money when he wasn't. And we finally had to talk him into closing that packing house down because he had about 5 years in a row when he was not moving enough volume of fruit to make it profitable. But he really didn't want to close that packing house.
Well, I knew Bill Matthews, who was the production manager there, very well, and
Yeah.
Bill was a great guy. I always loved to go into his office because it was at least as messy and disorganized as mine was.
Yeah.
Papers were everywhere,
Yeah.
and he could find it, but I always marveled at how someone who was as well versed in the grove business and everything, how he could find anything in that office of his. But he was a great guy. I always enjoyed spending some time with Bill. Dan McKinnon was also another individual that ran things his way and was kind of you almost had to get Dan's permission if he wanted to do anything in West Orange County.
Yeah. Well, Dan was a perfectionist. He wanted everything perfect. He took very good husbandry into his orange groves. He spent extra money on them, and he was a fine person.
Yeah, my uncle had a little grove that Dan looked after, and he used to he would ask me, he said, "I'm paying X amount of dollars to grow a crop of fruit. Isn't that a little high?" And I would always say, "Yeah, probably is, but you're getting a deluxe treatment. The trees weren't hurting for anything else." Well, some of the old timers, did you ever have any dealings with R.D. Keene? Was he a tough customer, or did you know him at all? I worked with with Fred Saunders, his production man, but I never had any dealings with Mr. Keene.
I never had any dealings with Mr. Keene. I knew his head bookkeeper, Jim Glockley, and I guess Jeff Huppel at one time was taking care of Mr. Huppel's, or taking care of Jim Glockley's groves. Well, Jim got out of sorts with Huppel, and he hired me to take care of his orange grove. So I was kind of knew what was going on with the Keene organization through Jim Glockley, and and then I think the son-in-law McPherson, he came to work with Mr. Keene, knew him very well, but no real dealing with Mr. Keene himself.
Yeah, Mr. McPherson had some medical issues, and I believe that his son now, Rex, is running the organization. And Rex is the Keene organization has moved from the little house here on Plant Street to the office on 50 to a suite in a office building in downtown Orlando. I don't think they have a citrus tree left in there. So some families come and some families go.
Yeah.
The Freeman family's still around.
Yeah.
What was your interaction with Bob and his dad? And
Well, I never really did much with Bob. I did more with his father. And I guess in those years when I was working for his father, Bob was still in school. And but it was custom work we did for his father, Percy, and that was like spraying and hedging and that sort of thing. But it wasn't total care of their property.
now, we were talking earlier at lunch about packing houses and all the packing houses that were located in the Winter Garden in Ocoee area. It must have been citrus must have been the only thing that really was in Winter Garden, between the Grove Care and the packing houses, and then eventually the processing plant came. So now Winter Garden's a mecca for bicyclists and everything else. But what was it like growing up in this area and living in this area? People like Hoyle Pounds and so forth. It had to have all just revolved right around citrus.
Well, it was a pretty good experience. No traffic like we have today, and but it was like Winter Garden. Nothing going on downtown except on Saturday night. And on Saturday night, the streets were full of people. People came to town to buy groceries for the week. And the town was wide open until probably midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. But the rest of the time it was very quiet.
You worked so hard during the day, you weren't going to party at night, I guess.
Right.
We were looking at pictures of a 38-foot picking ladder that we placed at Florida's Natural, and then trees were big, and you had to have big tall ladder to do that, and it was a full day's work harvesting, and it had to have been a way of life that was hard but rewarding.
Yep.
You didn't do any harvesting, you just strictly did grove care. Correct.
And no harvesting.
So Richard, you grew up in citrus. What was it like for you? I mean, did you? I was a city boy, and my friend Jerry Chacon always likes to tease me that I didn't develop character on the end of a hoe handle, and I'm sure that you spent many an hour hoeing a grove and working from far back as you can remember. What was it like growing up in citrus and working with your dad?
Well, it was kind of a funny experience because, as a young person, whether it's citrus or any kind of farming, you're not growing up in town. So your environment is, I won't say necessarily work, but to get out and have interaction with other people, you got to go work or either go to friends that their families are in ag and they're doing something. So I didn't have to work as a kid in the grove, but I did it because my granddad would pay me 10 cents a tree in the afternoon to hoe orange trees with a scuffle hoe, and you had to hoe them all the way out to the drip, which was a pretty good little deal. Give me 10 cents a tree. And I go home after school and I'd go out there and I might hoe 10 trees or 15 trees, and that'd make me $1. And if I did it every day, Saturday I had some money. If I wanted to go to town and go to the movie, at least I had some money in my pocket. I could buy me some popcorn or whatever, and and I guess it kind of instilled a work ethic in me, that hey, money don't grow on trees, and if you want something, you got to work for it. And that's what I really remember about growing up in Citrus, other than, man, the groves was a playground. I mean, we could go out there and hunt in the afternoons. We could go hunt at night. We'd shoot rabbits. We want to go fishing. You know, the groves was full of good fishing lakes, and you know, so it was kind of like Pandora's box, I guess. It was good.
Well, you're still in the business, right? You all have
Right.
groves, and
Yep.
so you obviously have some optimism that we're going to survive with greening, or at least find a way to get around it.
Well, I think there's something out there. I don't know what. And like you said, you know, they've spent millions of dollars, and you thought by now they would have come up with a cure or something to combat the psyllids and transmitting of the Lyribacter. But I've got a feeling that there's something, and somebody's got. I mean, most things people have stumbled on it. They've not discovered it. They've worked at it hard enough. They found it. It's there. You just got to find it. They're not going to develop it, I don't think. They're going to stumble on it. I mean, if it's something that you could concoct or develop, I think that.
Well, we've been looking for a number of years in test tubes and
Right.
looking at genetic manipulation, and we're finding better things all along.
Right.
But growers are also coming up with ways. I found it interesting that over my career that growers would end up finding a solution to a problem, and the researcher would come down and say, "Oh yeah, what you did was such and such." You know, I mean, you figured out that we could elevate a micro sprinkler and protect a citrus tree, and that wasn't done with the researcher doing. That was with Nick Farina experimenting around, and so growers are pretty good at figuring out solutions and coming up with ways to do things a little bit better. And people had some help. We were talking earlier about Hoyle Pounds, and Hoyle was always going to figure a way. If you needed a piece of equipment, he was going to figure a way to get it for you and have something that would get the job done for you.
Right.
Hoyle, from what growers tell me, that one reason that Mr. Pounds was so successful was that if you bought a piece of equipment from you, he was going to service it and keep it going. That he understood if you had a tractor that was down, you were losing money, and that he got it back for you as quick as possible. What kind of a guy was Hoyle Pounds? Was he someone easy to deal with, or was he always off in different directions?
Well, he was very easy to deal with, and he was a wonderful salesman. He could, like you say, if you had a tractor that was down in the grove, he would send out and get it, bring it in, repair it, and have it back to maybe the next day. And he had about 4 or 5 old-time mechanics that were really good, and he gave very good service. And that was really, he had the best service of any of the tractor companies, and that's the reason that he was so successful.
Yeah, Phil, you were telling me that that Pounds was so good at getting parts that he'd put them on the train in Winter Garden, and somebody'd pick a tractor part up in Tavares.
Yes, Lake Region. Lake Region had a number of groves, of course, and had a fleet of case tractors. And the engineer on the Tiberian Gulf was a member of Lake Region. So when they needed parts, they would call Pounds Motors and get the order into them. And they'd tell them that the train would pick them up. So when the train came through, they would stop. Red would go in and pick up the parts, take them back to them, and they'd have them the next day.
Now, there weren't many tractor parts that were delivered by train, I can assure you, but that was, well, Mr. Pounds set a standard, and so that's, kind of an interesting deal that he realized the importance of servicing and keeping the existing customers happy. Some of the events, that changed change the situation. Obviously, the freezes have been having a major impact here, going probably back to 57, 58 was probably the first one of the freezes. We were pretty fortunate into the 40s and early 50s not to have any real severe freezes. So what are some of your recollections with the freezes like 62? Did you think that the world had come to an end, or it had to have been difficult when temperatures got into the teens around here?
Yeah, well, I can remember freezes all the way back into the 30s. And of course, I was young enough then that I wasn't involved in citrus, but my father was, and I'd be riding with him in different groves where they were frozen. But 57 was the first freeze that I was really involved in, and that was a radiation type freeze and no wind. And it affected Orange County a lot more than Lake County, because Lake County groves were higher elevation. And but then 62 came along, and it was a different situation. We had a lot of wind in that freeze, one of the first windy freezes we ever had that I could remember. And the hilltops in Lake County froze, and the lower land here in Orange County didn't get hurt as bad. But in both of those freezes, why, we were able to prune and restore the trees and continue to get back into production pretty quick. And actually, they helped the citrus market by cutting down on production. And as we came back into production, we got more money for our fruit. So they were not all bad.
No, I remember that. I think it was well, I wasn't here for the 62 freeze, but the 62 freeze really altered our whole concept about tree size control, because we pruned the trees back so heavily after the 62 freeze, and lo and behold, in 66, 67, we had a huge crop.
Yeah.
And people all of a sudden said, well, man, we don't have to let the trees get completely out of sight, that we can start pruning. So I guess that after the 62 freeze, it became very common to mechanically prune and control the tree size.
Yeah. More hedging and topping.
Topping took place.
Right.
And in my memory, the price of fruit was taking a real beating in the mid 70s, and we had a freeze in 76, and that was one where it snowed in Miami. And when that happens, price goes up, volume down, price up, and it seems like that almost was a boost for the industry for a number of years, at least for a few years, until we reached the 80s.
Right.
You know, that's not a really fantastic way to control the market with freezes, but sometimes Mother Nature was very helpful. I'm sure you knew growers that did very well after the freezes because they had warm locations. You
Right.
know? Mr. Keene had a lot of grows at Lake Butler and down in that area, and around water, the trees do a lot better than ones that weren't around the water. But did the freezes of the 80s put you out of the grove care business, or would you? What was when did you finally decide that you weren't having as much fun looking after groves?
Well, it was the three freezes in the 80s, which we had a lot of tree damage in the early 80s from the first freeze, and then in the middle 80s we finished killing the trees, and we went and replanted some of our groves, and then they got killed down again at the 1989-90 freeze, and that's what killed all the industry up here in Central Florida. And so we didn't stay in business too many years after that, because there wasn't enough groves to take care of to have enough volume even to making the caretaking business profitable.
You know, when Disney came in '71, the talk was that Disney's going to put citrus out of business. You know, they're going to take all the help and everything else.
Yeah.
From what I can remember, Disney almost had no impact on your labor supply or anything else. It was just, they were just there. I mean, and growers weren't interested in selling property back then because they were making money in the 70s. And so Orlando spread north and south. They didn't come this way because citrus is still an economic venture.
Right. That's correct. And then when we did lose all of our groves and our land became available for development, Orlando, the county, wasn't interested in us in producing houses out here. So that founded Claremont. Lake County was interested in the building, so everybody went to Claremont. They skipped over Orange County.
Yeah, you don't recognize Claremont anymore.
No.
It's amazing. You know, you used to see all those trees from the tower, and you don't see a tree at all from the citrus tower anymore. Well, it's been a experience for those of us who've been involved in the industry. Phil grew up with it. His dad had a grove, and Phil viewed the citrus industry from a little bit different perspective out at Water Conserve too. And how much did the city pay for some of that high acres property out there that we all thought was astronomically high?
Just less than $5,000 per acre.
So they bought how many thousands of acres?
2,500 acres.
And we thought that they had lost their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that one of our friends sold some of that property out there for $165,000 an acre. Not bad. Kind of hard to stay in the citrus business at $165,000 an acre in spite of greening. So anyway, it's been an interesting. Did I understand correctly? Did you and Dr. Ziegler continue to correspond, and did he bring students down to visit you when he was teaching class in Gainesville?
Yes, he did. When he'd have a field trip every year for a few years, he'd call me and he would bring students down, and I'd meet them at one of the groves and explain to them what we were doing and the caretaking situation and so forth.
Yeah, I think that Dr. Ziegler had a couple of growers that he loved to come see, and he would visit you, and he would go visit Doc Hoosman over at FCHoF.
Right.
And that's another colorful individual. The first grower that I visited as a county agent in 1968 was Werner Hoosman. Yeah. And I got an education right off the bat in a hurry. It was an experience. He was mixing his own spray oil, and it was wonderful. Did you know Fred Lawrence, by the way? Fred was the extension guy up in Gainesville.
Oh yeah.
And
I knew Fred well.
He was a commander in the Navy, I believe, but he was a mentor to a lot of us young extension agents, and I don't think anybody knew the citrus industry better than Fred did. He knew everybody, where all the skeletons were hidden and everything else, but he was a first-class character. I really enjoyed Fred Lawrence.
You know, you were talking about Dr. Hoosman. Actually, I went on a field trip with Dr. Ziegler to Dr. Hoosman's while I was still in school up there.
Yeah, Hoosman, he was someone that would interact with and share his feelings, and he wasn't shy at all about it. And he grew some fabulous grapefruit. I think that he had some nice grapefruit. In fact, we have a label that one of Hoosman's labels, and people didn't realize it, but you could have a crate label for your fruit even though you didn't have a packing house. And so Hoosman had labels made up for his fruit that went through, I believe, Lakeland Packing, probably did a lot of his packing. So his fruit was identified even though he didn't run a packing house. But how many packing houses were there, Phil, at one time in this area, in the Winter Garden East? West Orange County area.
between packing houses and individuals that packed fruit was greater than 50. The number was greater than 50 for the West Orange County area.
And of course, you employed a number of people in the Grove Care business, but the packing house was by far the largest employer, and especially providing second incomes for people. And a lot of women worked in the packing house grading and packing fruit and everything else. And I guess it's like a lot of things that gradually moved from a lot of smaller houses to a few bigger and bigger houses that ended up packing it. And so you finally end up with 5 or 6 bigger houses in this area that pack fruit between South Lake and Winter Garden CGA and Roper and so forth.
This area in the late 40s, early 50s was the largest citrus shipping point in the U.S.
And it went out by rail.
Rail.
And you know all about railroads and the importance. You know, and the railroad companies built a lot of packing houses, didn't they?
Yes, to attract customers, they built packing houses for them so that they would be able to ship their fruit north.
I was reading that some places in Claremont, they actually shipped some fruit across Lake Apopka or maybe Lake Dora to Lake Region to be packed. So there were some strange situations and arrangements. You know, we were talking about how organizations have come and gone, and I marvel at how some of these outfits survived the Depression, and so how some packing houses were able to thrive and others didn't. And probably there were some well-known people that managed packing houses like Babe Pravat and Crip Holbert and so forth. Must have been interesting in it, growing up in a town where you had these folks and this situation, and every family had to have people involved in the citrus business to one degree or another, whether their mom packed fruit or their dad ran a picking crew or whatever else. And we need to tell that history and preserve that history, because I'm fascinated with it, and I know other people will be too. Any other comments you can think of? I'm about to run out of questions, but
That's it.
Blossom, you and I didn't have much interaction when I was an agent here. Did you deal with Henry Swanson much?
I did earlier in his career, but then later on, Henry got to be more of a politician than he did a county agent.
Henry got to be a prophet, Jeremiah Swanson.
Right, Jeremiah Swanson.
He was, and you know, Henry realized the crucial issue with water long before a lot of people did, and people made fun of him a little bit. But I think Henry was pretty prophetic in saying that, you know, we needed to be aware that water wasn't an unlimited resource and protect it. I was really fortunate because when I started, I was the first county agent that worked 2 counties, and so I worked Lake and Orange County, and I only worked one crop. I just worked citrus, and Henry could have been pretty defensive and said, "No, I've been doing citrus for all these years, you know. I'm sorry, kid, you'll have to drum up your own clientele." But Henry was just the opposite. He welcomed me and introduced me to people and got me started in trench and everything else. And Bob Norris had retired when I came, but Bob also was extremely supportive. And I found that the citrus industry was kind of like a big family, in that there weren't any secrets, at least that I could see. If you had came up with something that fertilizing young trees, you didn't mind sharing it with other production people or what have you, that this wasn't about me competing against you. This was about us trying to do a good job of growing citrus. And
Right.
that camaraderie seemed to exist, and in fact it still does today, you know.
Yeah.
You kind of work together, you know. You help me and I'll help you. And I always enjoyed that because I felt like I was part of a big family, and they looked after me as a kid. I can tell you that because I was green. I'd never even driven a tractor, and here I am, a county agent.
Yeah.
Was a little daunting at first to try to get in with the group and everything else. But it was Citrus has been fantastic, and we're gonna tell the story. I appreciate you sharing with us.
Good. Yep, it needs to be carried along.
It does. Richard, keep up, keep planting, keep going, and find me a tractor.
We're gonna try.
We're gonna put a citrus barn, hopefully in the historic village in Claremont. So eventually you can come see what a barn looked like, some of the equipment that Blossom used to look after citrus. It'll be fun. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll wrap
Thank
it
you.
up.